One of the most confusing parts about burnout is realizing it can still happen even when you're setting boundaries, even when you're staying authentic and trying to do everything the healthy way. And sometimes when we hear the word burnout, we feel like it's like an accusation, as if we're doing something incorrectly. And my friend, that is not what it is about. Today, we're talking about why burnout persists even when teachers stay grounded. I have a special guest who is here today, and I'm excited for you to meet her. So today I'm excited to introduce Miriam Groom, the founder and CEO of Mindful Career. Miriam is a behavioral career therapist, organizational psychologist, and human behavior specialist who has helped thousands of people navigate burnout, career transitions, and finding work that actually aligns with who they are. Her work blends psychology, neuroscience, and career strategy in a deeply human and practical way. Now, originally, when Miriam and I talked about her coming on the podcast, we were talking about how we could help students with this kind of thinking, how we could help them almost realize their element, which is a Sir Ken Robinson term, where you find the thing you're good at and you can make a living doing it. And we talked about that. But as we were talking, I really started to feel like this was a really good conversation to have with teachers. Because if there are often times where teachers have felt like they are trapped in the profession, where they don't know what else they could do. Well, there are other options. There are other options if that's where you are in your life. So I want you to know, I want you to think about this conversation in two ways, as what you could do in order to help kids determine their path, their element, even if it's younger kids, even if it's elementary age kids. And then how or what this could do for you. Hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, so let's get started. So I'm so excited to have a guest with me today, Miriam Groom, and she's going to blow your mind, I think. But she's a CEO and you're the founder, correct?
Yep.
And yes, I think that is so cool. And tell us a little bit actually about your company, what it is, what it means, what it can do for teachers.
Yep. So my journey here was I was actually in corporate. I was changed jobs a lot because I started off in a family business, and then I went to a large corporation, and I just constantly felt very burnt out and misaligned. And so in order to solve that, I went on sick leave, and I kind of dug deep and tried to solve my own problems and tried to get that clarity. And through that, because I was already in HR and organizational psychology, I was already in the field, I kind of developed this process that helped me profile myself and figure out what I should do with my life, understand my skill sets, really, and dig deep. A lot of soul searching to figure out really what are my real interests. All of us mask, all of us, especially women, we take on opportunities because they're given to us, and we just say, yes, 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 I'll take this on. And then we lose sight of who we truly are. And so that's what happened to me. And so through this exploration, I got certified in a bunch of psychometrics, and I did them because I wanted to go see psychologists, but unfortunately they were great. They just weren't able to really understand. They don't understand careers, right? They haven't been in HR and things like that. So I actually got my master's in psychology later in life to kind of figure all this stuff out. And I found a methodology that worked for me. I started doing it with my friends, and I ended up quitting my job and opening up a business doing this about several years ago. And so that's what Mindful Career was born out of, we essentially helped at the beginning professionals strictly just find your ideal career. So we profile you and we figure out what you're meant to do in your life. And I use the same methodology as I found and I did on myself. And it's been evolving since then. But every
Yeah.
single professional that we spoke to was like, I wish I had this when I was young. Can you do
Yes.
this with my kids? Can you do this with my teenagers? Mostly, obviously, the sweet spot is like 12, 13 years old to start, and then up to
Yes.
high school.
Oh, that's really interesting, especially with the amount of pressure that
Yeah.
we are putting on kids to know what they're doing. And then they've changed some of the like ways, and even in college where you can't just kind of float along. Like I changed my major 7 times. So
Yeah.
younger me, I'm thinking younger me, like in my 20s, my 30s, this would have helped. But this would have helped me when I was 15, 16 years old, when I didn't know what I wanted to do. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Because teachers, your parents, oftentimes, if they're present and they have the wherewithal to do this, will often see you and say, okay, we do this with babies a lot too. Oh, he's taking apart things and putting things together.
Yeah,
He's
he's
going to
an
be an
engineer.
engineer. Yeah.
Yeah.
With kids. And then it's sad, as kids get older, you're kind of like you stop seeing them as much because they're just in school most of the time, and you're not with them as much, and everything they do isn't as amazing, when they're like little babies. But we have to continue doing that with kids and with our students and things like that. Is just see them and see those unique sides of them, because that's a window into their strengths and what they're meant to do and the gifts that they're meant to kind of give the world. And it could be anything from drawing to the way they speak, the way they communicate, the way they smile, how their warmth, and it could be windows into who they are. And you don't need to start profiling them, but you could just start seeing them as a kid, even younger than that. But really, the profiling that we do is psychometric and neuroscience based. And I'd say lightly at 13, 14, because you can't start talking about careers with them that young, because they don't know the world of
All the
work,
careers. Yes,
all the
yes.
careers, they
You don't
don't
know what the
understand.
options are. That
Yeah.
that's what how I felt. I felt like, can you someone just give me a book on all the things that are possible, because I don't know. I felt that
Yeah.
way for so long. Even listening now, I'm like, oh gosh, that might benefit me at this exact moment. And I know my daughter, she's 26, and she's having a hard time like figuring out exactly what she wants to do with her life. And I think this sounds great. All right, so how does this, because there's like several questions I have. How does this work for the teacher? When we were speaking off air for a little bit, and we were talking about the funding and like people pointing their finger at, does this something else that teachers have to do, or is this the school counselor, is who's responsible? I think it makes so much sense that the teacher, because you get to see the kids, you're living with depending on what grade level you are. My background is elementary, so I'm immediately, you're talking and I'm thinking of this second grader that I had who wanted to be a meteorologist. And it wasn't just that she didn't just want to be like a weather person on TV. She loved the science of it. And I was like, all her life, I'm like, she's going to be a meteorologist. And her mom and I were good friends. And she ended up going into teaching. And I was like, what? She's going to be a meteorologist. How is she going into teaching? Well, she didn't stay in teaching. She left in her first year. She did not like it. And I'm like, I told you she should have been a meteorologist. So I think
Yeah.
you have that experience with them, but how do you add another thing to your plate?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey teachers, if you're teaching summer school, sending home summer practice, or you're just trying to help kids keep reading without making it feel heavy, I've created some simple summer reading comprehension resources that might help. They're short, they're engaging, they're low prep, they're designed to keep learning going without overwhelming anyone. They've got fiction and nonfiction paired texts, and they are super fun. You can find them at Trina Debery Teaching and Learning on TPT or on Etsy. The link is in the show notes.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that teachers can't do it all. So if you do have a curriculum in place for career alignment, that's something else, and that's a completely different subject. But how can you
Mhm.
um, just be a teacher teaching your course and helping your kids on the side align and see themselves is by just seeing like and I'm talking to parents too, just
Sure.
seeing them and seeing them, not really deeply seeing them and recognizing who they are, and when they do something that's really unique, and it could even be something that you would deem as negative, like getting really frustrated because things aren't happening fast enough,
Mhm.
that you could identify as impatience, but you could also identify that as ambition, because impatience and ambition are usually hand in hand. And so there's a yin and yang to every personality
Sure.
trait. There's the dark and then there's the light. And with nobody's going to be everything good. With even
Mhm.
a helper and somebody that sometimes they give too much of themselves and then they end up resentful, and so the giver often on the other hand can suffer with resentment, and because they don't know how to ask, and then they so you need to first understand that and to start recognizing um, the traits of the students and just seeing them. You don't have to do even more than that, even at a young age, is just seeing them and complimenting them, because we all remember those teachers who just said, wow, you signed your name so nicely. You have such good penmanship. And for some reason, that
Yeah.
stayed in your head, right? And just because very few people do that. And
Recognize it. No, you're right. They don't recognize those things that we hold on to as something special about ourselves. And I
yeah,
think that makes so much sense. And the part of me in my brain is like I like fell in love with, I don't know, like 12 years ago, fell in love with the idea of makerspace and STEM. And while you're talking, I'm like, this is just another way that you're gathering that information, because you're watching them do those kinds of things, where you're watching them cultivate soft skills, and you're watching how they interact with others, or if they need to work by themselves, and what kind of profession that would be a benefit to, or, or if you're more of I need to do it alone, like I need my own space, that matters too in the job that you eventually choose. So I think that's the perfect like space for that. But at the same time, like the past, like not negative, I don't want to say negative, but person that's like, but how can we? People feel like when they're told they have to use specific curriculums, or they're told they have to use scripted programs, or horrible technology that kids are just sitting in front of in a regular, you're not going to see things about your kids if
yeah,
you are forced to do that kind of teaching.
yeah, yeah. Um, there's a couple different issues here. Is that I think that there's, and we were talking about this pre-show, but there's a blind spot and a gap, what I would call, in the world of, like, I would say, human, like, I wouldn't
Yeah,
call it evolution, but like the workflow of life. So you're expected to send your kids to school, and what is the parent's responsibility and what is the
yes,
school's responsibility, and there's a gap there. And just because we're dropping your kids off
absolutely.
8 hours
Yes,
a day, it doesn't mean that the teachers and the school is responsible for the alignment of your child's life. The
yes.
the teacher is there to educate your child. Yes, 100%. They have curriculums and there's classes. But, and I'm going to say that there are guidance counselors in the school, 100%.
Mhm.
But there's not enough funding in the school to actually do any guidance
No, it's testing.
level.
They're
That, yeah,
responsible for
testing.
testing. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's one person. I've
And there's
spoken to
one, exactly.
one
And when
person
it's
for
testing season, you don't see
yeah.
that person at all. So
No,
you're absolutely right. There is a massive gap
there's a
about
gap.
the expectations that we have from parents and from teachers themselves. Like, where, if I'm supposed, you're not just a knowledge giver. Like, you want the child to think. You want them to actually be thinking and wondering and like critically thinking. And we're
Yeah.
so there's a hole. I can see so many holes in so many different parts of the system when we
Yeah.
think about this, because I feel like we're so far away that this is one of my, it's interesting because when I read your email, I immediately, and I normally don't like say, come on or whatever. Um, but I was like immediately drawn to what you were saying. And I'm like, this is really interesting to me because there's because I care so much about how kids feel about themselves as
Yeah.
people and learners. And that part, that piece of like caring how they feel about it is missing. And it's not just missing in the classroom, it's missing even at home.
Yeah.
I got on this big tangent about wanting to help parents help their
Yeah.
child love to read.
Yeah.
And nobody was interested. Nobody was interested in anything that I was saying about helping. They were like, well, how's it going to impact them in testing? How are they going to do on testing? And they have to read, these decodable readers, or they have to do this or this or that. And I'm like, well, I can tell you right now that kids are going to hate reading if that's the only reading experience they're getting. But everybody was like, I don't care how they feel about it. This is what they have to do for school. And and so that feels like a gap right there. And so making the work that you're talking about doing, oh, it's like where do you start?
Yeah, because our whole methodology, and I'm gonna address a lot of these really good points. One, the whole feeling how to read. It's like going to the doctor and saying, I need you to fix the pain in my child's hip or pain in his leg." And you're saying, okay, well, it's the alignment, it's how he's walking. And you're saying, just put it, just here, just give him a pill and figure it out. You have to fix the core issue of
Yes,
things, which is how they feel about it. And then all of that is going to happen naturally. They're going to end up getting, so it's a whole
yes,
philosophy of what we're doing. And it's Carl Jung, who's a preeminent personality psychologist. And he talks about individuation. What he talks about is that your passion, what you're meant to be, your purpose, because he was also very spiritual and like a mystic, and he's very respected, of course, in psychology and clinically. But there's all these people talk about all these things and they're like, oh, it's so vague to me. It's the same thing. Your purpose, your strengths, all of it, it is your gift that you were given. Your brain chemistry was given like some sort of recipe that makes you really good at something, and that's what you're meant to do in your life, and that's what will bring you happiness and passion. Why? Clinically, if you're good at something, it comes naturally to you and you get into flow and you're happy. And then what happens is a snowball effect. You speak about it, you're good at it, you get raises, people want to listen to you. And that's being in flow. It's being in that space. It's not
yes,
15 different things, it's just one
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But people have this blockage and they don't, they, which is what happened to me in my burnout and depression. And that's what happens to really young kids. I want to stop this from happening young because I let it go so long, this masking, that it took me almost 6 months to a year at home on disability to get
Mhm.
over it, to be like, take mask after mask after mask after mask and say, who am I? Why do I want this car? Why do I want this house? Why do I want to live here? Am I in the right marriage? Do I want kids? Do I not want, like all of these things, these preconceived conditions, because I am caring, you do things that you think other people and make other people
Yeah.
happy and everything. So as a kid, you do it, but the walls aren't as thick. So it's
Yeah.
easier to kind of like
Yes, to unlayer, it's easy to get some of those masks off because they
mask
haven't
off.
been living for
Yeah,
30 or
yeah,
40 years of life.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people experience massive amount of trauma, which some kids do, and we'll keep that to like the side. But that's the core, and that's the foundation of the house that you need to build with it, so it doesn't fall down and it doesn't crumble, and they don't go into, like you said, education and then decide that's not for them. I started my education in psychology, which was my natural passion. It was very easy for me. I was going through, but because I had such low self-esteem, anything that was easy to me, I thought was bad. Oh,
Yeah.
this is fluff. This is bad. This is no good. I need to
Oh,
live in suffering. So like I went to finance and it was suffering for me, but I'm like, this is good because that means it doesn't. And so this is some of the mentality that
yes,
a
it's
lot of
supposed to be hard. Yeah.
life is supposed to be
Yes.
hard, but it's not. Like some
Yes.
people, psychology is hard, and that would have been hard for them, but it's not hard for you because you have a natural affinity to understanding how the world works that way. And so all to say is that a lot of kids have this, and parents are like, because with AI and I don't know if my kid is going to have a good job, and I want to make sure it's coming from a good place. The parents
Mhm.
want to secure their child's future, but they're thinking in robotic terms of saying, if they go into engineering, how do I get them into these fields? Because this is what's going to pay them. And when I'm not around anymore, I want to make sure that they have a good life and that they're making money and they have a roof over their head. That's really what's coming from. And so it's coming from a good place. But instead of you're doing it backwards, you're thinking of the outcome,
Yes. Yes.
or
Instead
thinking
of helping them acquire those skills so that even if AI, something comes along that you never anticipate, you're able to adapt because that's the thing we focused on was those parts of you, which I
yeah,
think that makes total sense to me.
yeah. And these assessments too that they do in school, just to say, so let's say this person's doing assessments to all these kids. Assessments don't work on young kids. So you're having them do all these assessments, but they don't know how to answer the questions in the assessment. So what we see with a lot of students is that we have a student pathways program. So how we do it is that we don't ask them, hey, what do this assessment. And in the assessment, it's like, what happens when you're like when you're in this situation? They don't have the cognition to like, so we have them do it just to, it gives us a little bit of insight, but most of the job is the profiling. Most of the job, and this is where teachers and parents come in, because you act almost like profilers because you're observing behavior. But this is sometimes if you want it from a clinical sense, you need to have training in it. But I'll tell you some tools that you could train yourself for your as a parent and as a teacher. There's a specific tool that you could give to the kids and try to profile them. And it's so much fun and it's really cool, and align it to actual jobs. But what we say is so even me, I'm like, oh, really like the subject of psychology. So I'm going to go in that as a course. But you can't focus on that. You need to focus on what are your skill sets and what is the career or vocation that you're meant to do. And then
Mhm.
what's the schooling that'll get you there? Because you're in school, unless you're a lifelong learner, which I have a friend like
Mhm.
that. She's done two masters and a bachelor's, and she's doing some more school. She's a lifelong learner, and that's something
Yeah.
that's different, but she still has her job.
Yes.
You're in your career for most of your life, and you're in school for what, 4 years? If you're a physician, maybe 8 years. But it's the career. So I'll give you an example. We have people go into law. A litigator, who's the person sitting there litigating and arguing, is not going to do very well in school because the schooling of law is very conventional. It's a conventional type of learner, and it's the opposite of a litigator. Litigators are enterprising, and so they're going to hustle, and they're going to have to hustle and suffer through school, but they're going to be probably the highest paid and best lawyers, as
Mhm.
opposed to a traditional person who's conventional, who does really well in school, will be a great notary. So you're talking about the end goal of the education of law with two complete polar opposite personality types that are going to go in two completely different directions. So choosing law is not the right thing because you
Uh-huh.
could hustle through school, but you have to do it the right way, which is what's my brain chemistry? What's my specialization? What are my skills? What's my values? What religion am I? Because sometimes, if you're religious, Jewish or Muslim, or do you want to go to, do you have to go to mass? Are you praying? Or do you have some sort of obligations to your family? Do you want to stay? What is also your values and your culture and all of that? You have to put all of that together and say, okay, what's the career that suits me best? And that's what we do. And then the education becomes no brainer. Like
Yes,
clearly,
because that's a means to an end. It
yeah,
actually makes it relevant. Now my
yeah,
learning feels relevant to me.
yeah. And I'm not going to go and do a bachelor's degree. I'm going to do a skilled trade
Yes.
because that's going to get me to where I'm going. And then that becomes like a plumber. A plumber who ends up being a plumber who wasted 4 years in a bachelor's for some reason. Um, and he didn't waste it, and I don't like
Yeah.
wasting because
Yes. Yes.
he probably would be able to run his own business because he learned maybe business skills and all of that. But it's a means to an end, which is exactly that. And so these kids who come in and do all these testing, they don't believe in the test because it told them to be what, a bartender and a clown. Mine told me to be like a flight attendant, and flight, nothing against it, wouldn't be right for me. I
Yes.
wouldn't want to
Yes.
be around the like people that close. I'm extroverted, but definitely not in a way like it takes a very specific type of individual to be a flight attendant. And it wasn't right for me because I wasn't answering the questions properly. I was just
Mhm.
kind of going through the motions, and it just gave me a random response to how I randomly answer the questions. The actual thing to do as teachers is to understand, I would say, the Holland's code, HOLLANDS code. It's like,
Huh.
it's like a scientific, proven, valid scientific personality psychology framework that aligns your interests in your brain chemistry to 6 different brain types. So, what does that mean? If you were to scan your brain, and I would have you do, like, you see this in a lot of maybe FBI shows about psychology. They'll put brain scans and they'll have you see pictures and they'll see what
Mhm.
part of your brain lights up, like when they tell you if you use ChatGPT, or your brain is off, like there's only one part of your brain on, and that's why it's not great for us and all this stuff. But if you were to do that and you were to look at a teacher's brain and a business owner's brain, or a mathematician's brain, which are all opposite, or a firefighter's brain, it would be different parts of their brain that would light
Uh-huh.
up. And you would notice that in those tasks, that part of the brain is very active, meaning they have that strength. Now, without having to do brain scans, you could profile people, because uh, profiling mean these different brain
Like almost
types.
had like a set of criteria
We have a set of
for
criteria and
yes.
personality types. Yeah.
Hmm.
So we'll start with realistic. Which is one. Realistic are people who work with their hands. Okay. They're people who are in police work, like computer technicians, gardeners, anybody in landscaping, policemen, firemen, athletics, anybody in athletics, anybody who's like gone to the Olympics is definitely like pure, very realistic. You're not one dimensional, but in order to learn this, you need to categorize somebody under, like, what is your dominant type? If we
Hmm.
3 letters to each person, because which makes us unique and different, but if we just start with one, because then it tells you a realistic person that is usually dominated by individuals with, you know, medically born as men, as a sex as male,
Hmm.
because it's just hormonal. It's dominated by males, and they're usually a bit introverted, very logical, and if something breaks, they'll want to fix it. Like, you could even identify this, like if your kid is like this, they go into a lot of
Right.
skilled trades, also woodworking. My husband's like this. He's a huge woodworker. He finds value in his life by working with his hands, and there's a big creativity component here, which is different. But anything that they could fix and they could work with their hands or with their bodies. And so they have to be up, they have to be about. So if you are dominant realistic, there are roles which I mentioned before, which are, and I'll send you the mind map if you want to,
Yes,
that gives
absolutely.
you all of the jobs, but it's mechanic and construction, computer, hardware, and electronics. So not like on the computer, literally going to a computer and
Yes.
going to
Yes.
electronics and fixing it. Military, protective services, which is like firemen, policemen, nature and agriculture, and athletics. These people cannot sit down if they're dominant,
Yes.
realistic.
This is my son.
Yeah,
This is like
and he's
still my son.
logical.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk too much. He's like, and this is just the dominant. He doesn't need to
Yeah.
fit all of these, but he's like, "What are you talking? Like, stop with all the drama." Like, they're very, very, very like that. And so those are the subcategories of the jobs that he should go into. Not all of them will suit him, but at least it minimizes some jobs. And instead of
Hmm.
having the slew of jobs that
Yes.
are out there that
Yes.
are, endless, these are the jobs. So realistic is one. You could probably identify some of your students that are realistic. And so instead of having them do the Holland's code and do the assessment, which is called, I think it's personality profiler, that they use this in the background to profile. You could do it yourself, because they're probably a realistic. Your son would probably not even come out as realistic, because who knows how he'd answer these questions, because he's never.
You're absolutely right. The thing that made me think about the most was that he just likes to do things with his hands and he likes to move around. Like he's constantly, but he is a talker. So that part isn't true. But
I'm gonna tell you something else. So I'll go
yeah.
through all of them, and you're going to probably be able to identify. So it'll be really great, because you could do this, and we could do this exercise on the call, on the podcast, and you could identify his maybe 3 types, because you know him so well. Because
Uh-huh.
if you'll see which one's dominant for him, because it really just takes over. You could identify his persona more. So the second was investigative. These are scientific people. This is my sister. She, like, if you want to buy something, she'll be like, she'll look at every review, she'll do all the research, and she likes it. Okay. Like, I'll just buy anything and just test it. It'll come and I'll see if it's good, because I have no patience for that. But these are
Yeah.
the problem solvers. These are scientists, researchers, medical scientists, and mathematicians. These are people who get obsessed with subjects, want to know everything about the subject, and want to know data. They're thinkers. They want to know details. They don't believe things that you tell them. They want to understand why and where it's coming from. Like if you tell them that, whatever's going on that you saw it on TikTok, they'll roll their eyes and be like, oh, I want to know the actual source of where you found this information. Yes. So that's an investigative person. And like I said, that's sciences, research, medical science, and math. How many people are pushed into being a doctor when they're not dominant investigative? So many, because it's only a sixth of the population, basically, that is. Then there's artistic. This is a huge part for me. This is people who love creating. They find value. So the investigative find value solving problems. They love solving a problem. The artistic love to create anything. It could be a piece of literature, a poem, cooking, performing, visual arts. They love interior design. They love my kids like changing your room around. Like you constantly want to move your room around. I see that like it's very artistic and very aesthetic, and I love the decoration. And you probably like to be around very.
No, I love it, and I actually built those shelves. So, so I love it.
Yeah. So this is where we want to kind of build persona. So I could see you're realistic and you're artistic, especially if you're building the shelves, and that's something that you're naturally drawn to, not because you were forced to build them. Because there's people who have to do things because they have to. And then there's some things that you really enjoy and because you want to. So we have to differentiate those two things. Then there's social. These are the helpers. This is probably most of your audience. These are helpers, teachers, counselors, HR. People who are very big social end up in HR are not the happiest because they're working for the company. They're not really working for the benefit of people. So I would say be very careful if you're social and you end up in HR and you don't burn out. But training programs.
I kind of feel that way for me, for teachers. Like I feel the burnout part was the problem, because I wanted to help and make a difference, and I was constantly stopped. It was, or I had to work around it. I had to be the investigator. I had to figure out a way of solving it because I wasn't allowed to do it this way. So
because it was so social people want to do the best thing for the person. They get really stifled and burnt out when they have to prioritize a company or profits over the benefits of individuals. And that's why a lot of people go into nonprofit or even private practice counseling, which has its own problems because then you have to hustle for your clients and the whole thing. But like, that's where if you find a good culture, even nurses, we have healthcare nurses in here too, have a problem because the hospital has its own business and its own profit entity. And so they get burnt out a lot too, because they can't do what's best for the patient. And they're constantly fighting with that. But social people are usually in counseling, helping, teaching, education, HR and training, social science, religion. How do you identify this? Your child is probably constantly wanting to help, very sensitive to being a vegetarian, helping. It sees animals, wants to help them. Sees the elderly, feels really bad, cries easily at movies.
This is totally,
all of that, and very dominated by women. And so often we'll see a lot of boys who are social because in our practice, because they shun that. And we see a lot of women who are realistic because they shun that, because there's more of the dominance, and then they don't realize that there's a space for them in there. But social is dominated by females. So we have all of these jobs that you could, if you identify that as your child's number one core skill, you could minimize the jobs to those are the best thing for them. And then the last two are enterprising and conventional. Enterprising is business. People love to persuade, make money. I did this when I was younger. I gave out flyers because I wanted to start up a babysitting business. I wanted to do I take cans from my mom's kitchen and bring them outside and make a lemonade stand. I was really wanted,
Yeah.
very enterprising. Um,
Like an entrepreneur. Like the,
Entrepreneurs.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And
But
what was this? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
they don't mind the corporate side. Like they don't mind making
Yes.
money, and it doesn't mean over people's well-being, but these people don't burn out if they're enterprising first, then social. They make great HR people because they like people and they like helping, but they don't mind and they understand that businesses have to run and they need to make a profit, and they're
Yeah.
naturally okay with that. That won't burn them out. And so they go into like marketing and advertising, sales, management, entrepreneurship, and I'll send you the sheet. But public politicians and law are often in here. And these are, you have to be, these are very outgoing, uh, extroverted, persuasive, talking, strategic, but in an opportunistic way. And that's not a
Yeah.
bad word, opportunistic,
No,
but they,
no, no. Yes, I'm not taking it that way because
yeah,
this is my son again. So
yeah,
yes, yeah,
yeah.
that's
And
interesting.
often you'll see the artist going into marketing and advertising. Do they burn out? Of course they do, because their core role is an enterprising and it's not artistic. And this is where a
Yes.
lot of burnout happens, right?
This
Like
is
you're
my
like,
daughter. This is totally my daughter. She's
yeah,
artistic, but she's thinking about marketing. And I'm like, I don't think she'll be happy because
visual arts and design
yes.
is much more for her, designing like industrial designing, where she could stay with the core field of design. And
Mhm,
everybody's going to work in a business. Everybody's going to have to do enterprising stuff. Everybody's going to have to make money to make a living. Be
mhm,
Marketing is the goal of getting people to buy your product, not to make art. It's not to make things pretty. It's opportunistic. It's to make the more profits for the business. And we see a lot of that. A lot of artists, a lot of communication students who go into communication, art, and design, who end up in the big machine of marketing and advertising, who are very, very miserable. But those can be equally enterprising and artistic, but you have to make sure that you have an enterprising side to your personality and that you actually genuinely like that, or you're not going to be happy. And then there's conventional, these are the rule followers, buttoned up, office
yeah.
management, accounting, programming, and information systems always surprise me here, but it's like everything's in a box, everything's organized in finance and accounting. So these are like conventional people that think in a they're very organized. They spend their time like organizing their pantry, like Monica from Friends is conventional. Do you
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the profile there. And then they would do conventional enterprising people. It's not that they have a hard time in the world of work, but there's a lot of jobs for them. You know
Mhm,
what I mean? Conventional is like there's no lack of office admin and tax jobs. You're happy in that. You're good. The problem usually is culture, it's pressure, it's not knowing your limits, it's
mhm.
overworking, it's conflict with a peer. Enterprising, often if you're an entrepreneur, just putting too much pressure on yourself. So it's more of that and less of a career alignment issue. It's just like an environment issue. So those are the six. So if you could identify your son, you mentioned that he was realistic and
Yeah,
enterprising.
realistic and enterprising. Yes, those are the two that stuck out the most to me. Obviously, the whole time I'm like writing our initials. I found three for Emily, but
Which
that's
ones are
just my
hers?
daughter. Excuse me?
Hers are artistic, social.
Artistic, where is it? Artistic, social, and I actually think she has some conventional because she loves to create systems. She's loves to be organized. She loves to like have things that if I do this, this will happen. So, but at the same time is very like creative and visual, like visual things and art that she loves. And so that's yeah.
But at least you've minimized it to some things. And so
Yes,
the
yes.
and if you could say, well, she loves conventional, but thinking about jobs in tax or in office management, it could be a support. The conventional could be supporting her artistry, or is it leading and she's an office manager who does it in an artistic way? So I'll give you an example of myself. I run a
Mhm,
business. I'm
mhm,
mainly enterprising because I run a business,
mhm.
and I developed a program that helps people. So I am enterprising, social, and artistic. Now I'm EAS because like I love helping people, but I love creating things, and I created a programs. So you know how it doesn't need to be
Yes,
ended up
yes.
working that way, but my main thing was enterprising, and that I felt. ashamed about, because women are a little bit, they stray
No,
away
you're
from
right. The money mindset is a real thing. Is a real thing that
it.
you have to,
As
yes,
a, I was like opportunistic, or likes money, like status. I'm like, oh, that doesn't, but I'm
yes,
like, you have to come to terms with, yeah, yeah. And
yes.
it's what burns me out. And that's why when I was in KPMG, a large company, it was only enterprising my job, had no
Mhm.
social, no artistic. So it doesn't mean I was in the wrong job. It was meant that I was not feeding these two wolves inside of me that I had to
Yeah,
feed, these two passions. And so if as a kid and as a teacher to younger students, you don't need to figure all of this out, but giving them
yeah.
the tools so they could fish, like giving your kid this and saying, hey, let's do a little exercise together. Where do you feel like you fit in? Here are the subcategories of jobs. Like start thinking about these jobs. Like here are for your son, there's 6 categories in realistic and about 6 in enterprising. Here are 12 potential avenues. One of them is going to focus a lot on this. The other one's going to focus on this. And you could start seeing some of the jobs that you
It
would,
will at least narrow it down because
at least have done.
yes, because he's kind of he's in college right now and he doesn't know the direction. He doesn't know which way to go. And it was a lot to get him to that in the first place for himself. And so yes. Ooh, this is
That's a lot. This is what we do in
yeah,
profiling. This is
this
what
is
like
so
we
fascinating though.
that with this is what guidance counselors should do if there was 10 in a school, 12 in a school, and they could sit there and talk this out. And it's not one session that it's like, a here we did your blood test and you were
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah.
It's, hey, let's sit down and let's talk about. Oftentimes what gives a huge picture is talking to your parents, if you're lucky enough to have them around, is to ask how you were as a child, because that's our most raw self. And that's why even in high school, you're still
Yeah.
very raw. So you're able to like access that. But I had a client who described herself as a child as saying hi to everybody, a lot like my son, saying hi, like the mayor, like just going, just so friendly, smiling at everybody. But she was, her mom was from China. And culturally, they don't look at people in the eye and they don't smile and they're not they don't impose their being on somebody else. So they just nod and so she shunned that offer, not from a bad place, again, just because
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
she was
It's just
trying to protect
culture.
the child. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she became, she identified as extremely introverted when it wasn't really. And so it's just funny what happens when you sometimes dig back and say, okay, this is my real authentic self was like this. And I've grown to mask into a different personality. And then I chose a job that aligns with this masked personality. No wonder I'm sad. And I've
Yeah.
dug my grave so deep now. I have to just pull myself out
How
and
do I get out?
align
Yeah.
back to my real my real self. But that's why I'm so passionate about doing this with younger kids, is so you don't get to a point where you're 40, 45, or you're 50 and you're like, okay, now my kids are a little grown. I could focus on me and I have a huge, which is fine, a huge mountain to climb. And I just want to figure out who I am again. And we see that a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
individuals at that stage of their life. But
Because they finally feel like they have a moment to do
they have
that.
a moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. To focus on
That
themselves.
is, so okay. So where beside like so if I put your website link in my show notes, people will be able to find you that way. Is there any other way that they can find you?
So what I would say is, we have a US entity and a Canadian entity. So I'll send you the US version of the website. Where are you located? Where are
I'm
most of your
actually, they're all over and they are also in Canada and
Okay.
Australia. They're all over.
Okay.
But mainly, I mean, mainly in America. I'm in Florida, but
Okay.
that's kind of irrelevant. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you do a podcast, it doesn't matter where you are. So I'll send you a link where clients could just have a free intro call and just talk to our career consultants to see. It's almost like it's not an application process to go through our program, but we really do make sure that that it's a good fit. And
Mhm.
some people come to us thinking they need career counseling when they need counseling, psychological
Mhm.
counseling. They're not ready for the career counseling yet. So we come and we explain everything. We explain the process. For Canadians, we cover on insurance also and it's tax free because we're psychologists. So it's just like, we don't compete with, we like guidance counselors in schools, because it's like, you know, apples and
Yeah,
bananas, just
for
completely
sure.
different. We're not talking about the same thing. What I would love to do is empower um, teachers to have just at least one tool to know it, to be real, and so that they can they could help guide the kids by knowing this in the back of the brain, this framework, and say, why don't, have you thought of mechanics and construction before? Because
Mhm.
they're seeing that profile, and I think you would be really good at that. And here are some jobs, or here are some pathways that look like they
Yes,
align with
to
strengths.
explore. Yes, here's some things to
Explore and
explore.
see them. Yeah,
Yes,
instead of putting
good.
them through
Yeah,
assessment where they're probably not going to know how to answer it. But it's the Holland's Code that's the best one for career, finding an actual job description in a career. In the States, there's 1T Online. And I'm going to see 1T dot org. So it's ONET online.org. And it's
okay.
basically like what your government uses to like do, to get, government funding. There's a codes for every job. If you go in
Okay.
there, you could literally search, and you're going to like this, by job code. So let's say you think that your son is a realistic, and I'll send you the link in our chat. Let's say you think that your son is realistic enterprising. You could literally go in here and put R and then E and then go, and then you'll find every RE job. Um,
Wow.
so it's right on the top. You could probably see it. So this is the step
Wow.
2. I don't want to overwhelm people, but like there is a way to say, okay, once I find like maybe an option of like my son or my daughter or
Yes,
my student might be this. There's a whole, the 1T Online uses the Holland's Code at the back of it. And then if you click on the jobs, it tells you what education you would need for it. It tells you the salaries that you would need for it and the whole thing. So if you
I
can't
think that
afford
is
to do it
awesome.
with a
And
psychologist,
I think also a teacher. I think there's a lot of teachers that want to leave teaching. They feel trapped. They
yes,
don't know how their skills can translate. I
how
think
their skills can translate
yes.
100%.
So
Yeah.
I think that would, yeah, I love this.
So what they should do is, if they find their job, so you could put in the top right, there's literally a search, and you could just put um, teachers and instructors. Then if you go all the way to the bottom, it says similar jobs, and it'll
Uh-huh.
give you all the jobs that are similar, that require the same type of education and background. So this helps people transferable skills, knowing what other jobs
Yes.
they can go into. But not only that, if a student or a child is interested in a job, they can see what other options they have that is similar to that, but not
Yes.
exactly the same.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
love this. This was so great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
On. And if you get questions and you want to have a part 2 and we could dive deep into something else, just let me know, and I'd love to do that too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could talk all day, but I'm going to let you go for this, and then I want you to stay for just a second. So
Yeah.
thank you, Miriam. Thank you for all of this information and for like really getting us thinking. I love it. Thank you.